and I'm not really looking to be managed, quote unquote.
I think the way it works is that they start offering you, this is what I've thought. I think they start offering you deals like, hey, can you make a video about this? Can you make a video about this? Can you make a video about this? And they're like, okay, this guy's willing to play ball. And then you get the call. Like, you can't, if you're a big management agency and you're maybe a, you're like a madam or a whorehouse for prostitute or propagandist, sorry. then you can't just approach the person directly, immediately, Like, the boss doesn't hit you right away. No. You have to send in the agents. And would this guy be willing to comply? Would this guy be willing to change his stance? Would this guy be really anti-USS Liberty? And then if you are, then now we have a talk. So that's how I think it happens. I don't know.
Yeah, and then in a few months, then you're in Israel,
kissing the wall. Yeah. It just happens. It happens. Interesting. You have your USS Liberty shirt on.
You got to ruffle a few feathers, right?
Yeah, it's gonna piss some people off. Although the people that I think watch us regularly, they're like, "Oh yeah, boss."
Have you talked about the USS Liberty to your audience? How much do they know about it?
I haven't talked to them about it. I think that a lot of people already know about it, and I try to wait for the topic to kind of die down at memory hole, because then you get to reintroduce it to people that hadn't heard it before. But if you pile on when everyone else is piling on, especially in long form, then I think it's like, okay, other shows I watch are already talking about this. It gets repetitive. I don't know. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or not.
I don't know. Well, I know Candace did a huge expose on the USS Liberty, and I think when I think about when there's like a really big splash on a particular topic, it's always I try to get involved a little bit, not just to ride the bandwagon or the coattails, but it's really sometimes when they do a piece like that, you can't fit everything into that segment. And a lot of times there's like interesting details that people would find interesting, I think. And that's when you kind of add on and say, hey, that was a great piece, and here's a little bit of extra detail that they didn't cover, which is sort of relevant and you should know about. For example, when you talk about the USS Liberty, everybody just kind of thinks that, oh yeah, Israel did it, quote unquote, allegedly. Allegedly. But when you look at the actual details, because I did like a mini documentary, I talked to the president of the USS Liberty Veterans Association.
Oh, wow.
Phil Turney. And there's a lot of details in there that would point to not only just like Israeli involvement and purposefully doing that, but the U.S. more or less being complicit in that. He talked a lot about how President Johnson, Secretary of State McNamara, they were all kind of in on it, which would then, bigger picture-wise, if you look at today, everybody just thinks, oh, it's Israel. The CIA and a lot of intelligence, I think they're also complicit in this whole thing.
Just a quick break before this video continues. If you haven't signed up for Soju yet, go check it out, soj.oo. It's a social discussion platform that we've created. That's where the community is hanging out. Definitely worth checking out, soj.oo. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it now.
For example, if you talk about like JFK, right? Everybody just, if you see that on X all the time. It's like, oh, Israel did it. And I think that's a simplification of what happened. There's a lot of different groups involved in that. And I think that's something to understand about these events. There's never just like one cause. There are multiple groups where their interests align to do something. So that I think is just an important nuance to provide for people to kind of at least unpack that issue.
I think a lot of people get into the habit of just blaming one group like very quickly, not understanding the web of kind of connections and everything around it to make these things happen. I think it's interesting that that's something that everyone's saying these days, though, isn't it? Have you noticed that actually? That we went from, Jew. That's what everyone's doing for like a while. To all of a sudden, everyone's like, well, it's not all of them. Or, hey, it's not just their fault. There are other people at fault. Like, this actually hit all at the same time. Actually, I've noticed.
I mean, I think there's, to me, I've always made that distinction in terms of the way, because that's what I believe, right? I don't think this is a religious issue. I think this is like a political nationalistic project that they've now co-opted a religion in order to deflect criticism of what they're doing. I've always believed that. I still believe that. And so that's where I think I differ from some of the people like that are more awake, you could say, is that
JQ.
Exactly, which is, I think there is a distinction. I think there is a co-opting that's happening here. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the Jewish religion, but I just think that Zionists in particular have used it in order to push their agenda and also to deflect. I mean, you're seeing that right now. I mean, this is the one big disagreement I would have with the Trump administration is the destruction of the First Amendment, free speech of the Constitution in order to I guess please your $100 million donor.
250 million, depending on how you add it up.
Wait, what is the other?
Well, yeah,
So
Barry
one-
Edelson,
yep.
you have Jeffrey Yas, you have APAC, you have all the other groups. When you start adding, I mean, the top 3 biggest donors,
Sure.
they're all like, Israel first people.
Elon Musk, though, I would say, historically, this is really interesting, right? He was not an Israel first guy until very recently.
Well, until they pulled all his advertising, and then he did his trip to the Holocaust Museum, and did his trip to Auschwitz, and did his trip to the Wall, and then all of a sudden he is pro-Israel. It's just funny how that always works, Like, I'm not saying you can't be. If you choose to do so, like, do whatever you want in your life.
Sure.
But there's a pattern that once you do the trip, you come back like die hard for it. And I've seen that with the conservative influencers too.
And you've never been on this trip, right?
I was offered to go on that trip. When was that? Well, maybe it was this summer, or was it early last year?
Yeah, it's about a year ago, almost a year ago, I think.
Yeah, maybe a little less than a year ago. Yeah, they're like, hey, if you would like, we're gathering a group of influencers and we're going to go out to Israel. And of course, we're going to pay for everything. And all we ask is that you make a little bit of content while you're here. And it's going to be a good time. Trust me, it'll be great. Like, we'll fly you out. We're going to put you in hotels. We're going to feed you. We have an agenda. Like, all of this.
Yeah, but what happens on that trip, though?
I didn't go, so I don't know. But I know a lot of the names that went on that trip. And once they go and they come back, it's 180. All of a sudden, it's like, Israel first. You can't do this. Israel has a right to exist. You gotta kill all the terrorists. Like, all the stereotypical talking points that you get from maybe the conservative media or conservative movement that is very pro-Israel. You get all those talking points all at the same time, and it's always right after that trip. I don't know what they do. I don't know if they like brainwash people. I don't know if they have this MK Ultra program that's over there that they just wired into you, or they're just really convincing.
I think there's probably, if I were to speculate, there's probably a few things that happen, right? That everybody, I mean, the most, I guess, extreme, nefarious interpretation would be blackmail, probably, right? There's something that happens on that trip. You make a couple of wrong decisions or whatever, and
Interesting.
now you are compromised. So that's probably one. That's probably a tiny sliver of what happens. But I think a lot of it is probably influence. If you think about it, getting in with that crowd is really good for your career overall, right? If you just stay silent on that issue, or you or you are very outspoken about it, you can move your way up the ladder pretty fast. And so that's probably, I would say, the more common way that you become pro-Israel after that is they realize, oh, I can get into this conference, or I can get this job, and probably most people are like, I don't really care about what happens in Israel. I'll be pro-Israel. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I just care about my career, moving up, getting access to certain people, certain institutions. And I think that's probably the more likely scenario for most.
You go and you get to meet with some donors, maybe some investors, people that would help support your show, your podcast, your content. Like, we'll give you a contract, we will invest, we'll build you a new studio, and in that case, like, we're friends now. You gotta like be friendly with us, maybe.
I think that's more, I mean, what's more likely, doing, I think there's a lot more people who want to do that in terms of building their career versus doing something really bad, like, having sex with underage women. Like, that's not it for a lot of people. A lot of people aren't even interested in that at all. And so the easiest way is like, I'll give you access to really awesome things.
I mean, I think logically that makes sense. Practically that makes sense. I like to believe. I don't like to believe. Maybe I like to believe that they're just like grabbing people, drugging them, honeypotting them, putting them in really compromising situations, and then they have this blackmail folder somewhere. Like that just, I don't know. For some reason in my mind, that actually makes more sense. You know?
I mean, that definitely exists for sure. But you know, for example, like our esteemed presidents, a few of them definitely compromised.
Yeah.
Like you know, Bill Clinton, you could argue. You know, they I think they figure out what makes you tick, right? They figure out where your weakness is as well. And they say, okay, this guy, we can get through this technique. And then, or somebody else is like, oh, this is not going to work for him. Like he's not into this, you know, women. That's not really his I guess, weakness. So then they think of something else.
Thanks for watching the clip. If you want to see the full episode, click here. If you want to see more clips, click here.